Hello, how's it going? How's the morning
Good.
been?
Yeah, good. Okay. Well, we've got 14 minutes, so we will
Okay.
crack straight into it. Okay. So, Samuel, do you want to start by introducing yourself? Tell us who you are, what you do, and what being an entrepreneur is like.
Yeah, so I'm an entrepreneur and founder of Ilana. Bear with me, I've got a bit of a cold, so if I don't sound clear, apologies. But yeah, I'm a founder of Ilana. It's an e-commerce store for luxury black founders. Sorry, it's an e-commerce store for luxury black fashion designers and a platform for fashion designers to gain expertise. So from a consumer perspective, we allow the different consumers to shop with the different brands. And from a fashion designer's perspective, they could join our community and receive free consulting. But I've been an entrepreneur for over 10 years. So I ran a social enterprise training young people in garment printing skills and had a clothing brand attached to that. And that was under the umbrella of a charity, which I ran for 10 years. And we had a shop in Brixton Village. So we would offer garment printing skills to the community as well as organizations. And then we would also sell our clothing through that shop front. And then after that, I set up a marketplace for entrepreneurs to find co-working space locally, quickly, and affordably. And my most recent venture is Alana.
I love that. What a great comprehensive history. Thank you so much.
No
Also,
worries.
what's so interesting about that as well is that you've had like a bricks and mortar premises and you've also had like tech businesses as well. So, what's it like being an entrepreneur in both the physical sense and the digital sense?
Yeah, I think no matter what kind of business you're launching, it's difficult. There are challenges to either one, right? I think with a physical shop front, it's about raising awareness of your location. It's always good when you're in a prominent location and people already know about the venue. So we were able to obviously piggyback off the fact that people know about Brixton Village. It was popular at the time. There was a regeneration that happened in, like, when we actually went into the space. So we were able to piggyback off that publicity and awareness. But if you don't have that, then again, it's a marketing game, raising awareness, allowing people to understand what you're building and trying to get people through the door, which can be a bit challenging in itself.
Yeah, I can imagine marketing's so important. I mean, on both sides.
Absolutely.
So what would you say are the best things about being an entrepreneur, and what are the things that I guess you wish you could change?
The best things I would say about being an entrepreneur is actually seeing your ideas come to life. It's amazing when you're able to like actually think of a concept, bring it to life, and you're working with great people along the journey. The downside is the quiet season. So the seasons when you're not making as much money as you anticipated, things ain't going as well as you planned, there's problems within the business. One of the things I tend to say is that, businesses tend to have one or two problems. It's either a cash flow problem or a people problem. So no matter what stage of business, you will always have one either or problem, either a cash flow problem or a people problem. So, and solving one tends to solve the other. So the reality is that yeah, it's an up and down journey. So you just have to get used to the roller coaster.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can only imagine. And well, actually, well, I am a business owner technically, so I actually do know.
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
realised. I
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
wait, hang on, I own a business. Um, so, tell us about what you were like when you were younger. Like, did you always know that you were going to be an entrepreneur? Was that a kind of thing inside you that just needed to come out?
Yeah, I guess so. I was always selling stuff in like school and like Dragon Ball Z posters or CDs and like yeah, I was like always doing something. I guess like the entrepreneurial flair shows up when you're quite young. And it's the same with my journey. So yeah, definitely. I would say that I always displayed the traits of leadership, forward thinking, just running with my own ideas. I've always been quite stubborn when it comes to pursuing things that I'm passionate about. And I guess, yeah, entrepreneurship was the way to channel that. So
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that there are like specific skills that someone would be displaying at a school age? So we've got lots of people obviously watching, lots of students who are, under the age of 18. Like, what would you say to them if you were to kind of tell them to identify skills in themselves that would be
um
entrepreneurship?
I would say your ability to work with others is important. So if you're someone who's like able to connect with people quite easily, if you're someone who's a natural salesperson, I think yeah, like there are traits like, if you're passionate, if you're someone who's quite talkative, I think yeah, definitely these are traits that, if you got excessive or what's the word I'm looking for? Like quite quirky traits. Those are signs that, yeah, definitely you got an entrepreneurial flair or creative flair in your early days.
Definitely. And like subjects wise, do you think that comes out in the choice of any subjects at school or uni?
Not necessarily. I think with a lot of entrepreneurs, they tend to pivot, right? So I don't think they tend to stick to one thing. If you're curious about life, you're curious about just, yeah, what you're passionate about, then that will lead you down a path that you could explore
Yeah.
in entrepreneurship. So I think just that curiosity and approach to learning is a way to identify whether you're someone who's going to be an entrepreneur as opposed to a specific subject.
I think that's something that actually is kind of going to be a theme throughout the course of this week, the idea of being flexible in general. And, regardless of what career path you take, you kind of need to be like, have an open mind, right? And keep kind of
Absolutely.
like moving wherever the wind takes you. And you just mentioned that pivoting as an entrepreneur is so important. You have to be able to roll with the punches and adapt.
Absolutely.
Tell us a bit more about your experience with kind of, I guess, that flexing, and then also like, has that been hard? Was it natural for you?
Absolutely. I think for me, one of the major points where I had to pivot was COVID. I had previously launched a business which was around um, providing access for entrepreneurs to get co-working space. And as you know, co-working sector died essentially overnight. No one's going into the co-working space and working in even office spaces. So within the first few, quarter of COVID, I was trying to figure out, okay, what do I do now? And it was obviously during the summer that we now started Ilana. And, essentially we came up with that idea and within 6 months we launched the business. So for me, I've had to experience pivoting. Do you know what I mean? Desk was something I was very passionate about. And to now work on a new business and launch a new business was quite difficult and challenging considering the circumstances. But I was aware that the reality is that e-commerce was the way to go, especially considering that the world had changed.
And that was just like a feeling, wasn't it? It's like an instinct, isn't it? Rather than a kind of definitive, like you do have to be quite instinctive as an entrepreneur and confident in your own decisions and any risks that you might be taking. Would you say that's fair?
Absolutely. And I would say that you need essentially four characteristics to be a successful entrepreneur. And this is not something you're going to learn from anyone else. This is through my personal journey. But essentially, you need four C's in order to be a successful entrepreneur. You need to be competent. So you need to know your field, understand your field in a way that very few people do. One of the examples I love to use is Warren Buffett. Is in his 90s, he's a multi-billionaire, but he still spends 80% of his time reading. He reads a book a day. So the reality is that if you're someone who's at that level and still seeing the need to develop and keep learning, in order for you to be successful as an entrepreneur, you need to have that first, the desire to learn and to be curious about what you're pursuing. You need to be consistent. Brand recognition is built through consistency. The brands that we know and are familiar with, the reason why we know about them is because they were consistent. If you go to McDonald's in Brixton or South London, it's going to be the same experience as McDonald's in East London. They're consistent across the board. So the reality is that as entrepreneurs, you need to be consistent because people care about two things, what you say and your ability to deliver on it. Thirdly, you need community. The most successful businesses are built community around what they do. You need to be rooted in community and you need to build community. If you think about someone who owns an iPhone or an Apple product, they're proud to say they're part of this community. Have you seen my iPod? Have you seen my iPhone? Have you seen my MacBook? Because they're part of this community that champions what Apple does. And fourth and finally, you need character. You need to be someone who's integral, someone who's trustworthy because business is done off the basis of trust. If I don't trust you, I will never part my money with you. So those are the four C's you need to be successful.
Oh my God, that's a brilliant takeaway there. I think that's a really
No,
good list. I'm going to take inspiration from that. Okay, and so what do you think is the hardest bit about being an entrepreneur? Like, what is I guess, the thing, not the stumbling block that has been most detrimental to you, but I guess emotionally, rather than necessarily business in a business sense?
I think it's a very lonely journey. the reality is that when you're building and when you're not seeing as much, success in the early stage, it could be quite a lonely journey. And having community is vital. People that, support you, champion you, people that are encourage you along the journey, because you are going to hit those seasons where only you know why you're doing what you're doing. And having a support system is very vital in those seasons. We're only as strong as our support. So the reality is that, yeah, it's tough, nothing prepares you for how tough it is. The reality is that it's a long journey. It's a patient journey as well. On average, it takes about 10 years to be an overnight success. So are you willing to spend, 10 years of your life working on your idea to bring it to life? That's a question you need to answer in the early days, because it always takes longer than you anticipate it to. And it's always harder than you anticipated it to as well.
I completely back that sentiment. We've been at Eric for 10 years and, it's great, don't get me wrong, but it's 10 years of hard slog.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Would you say as well, I feel like social media does tend to glamorize entrepreneurship quite a lot.
Absolutely.
So I think there's a lot of young people probably watching who think that entrepreneurship and freelancing are two very different things, and entrepreneurship is very quick and glamorous and all, it's exponential growth and all that. But it is, just as hard, if not harder, than freelancing.
Yeah, it's a slow journey. And when you look at the success stories as well, it took Amazon 8 years to be successful. It took Airbnb 5 years for them to see major traction within their business. So majority of the businesses that we see over a long-term basis, it took them significant amount of years for them to be successful, get to a place of profitability. And the reality is that, yeah, we see the exceptions as opposed to the reality or the norm. So yeah, it's a slow journey. Like, nothing prepares you for the journey, but it's a worthwhile journey, especially when you're seeing the impact that it makes.
There's a couple of things that I want to touch upon before we head off.
No.
One is networks. Obviously, in the entrepreneurship world, your networks are so important. How would you recommend that young people watching could start building those kind of networks that would be useful to them in an entrepreneurship sense later on?
Socialize. I would say get out of your house or your room and just go to events, as many events as you can in the early days. LinkedIn is your best friend as well. Inbox people, reach out to people, cold email people. I would say, yeah, definitely. In the early stages, you can't afford to be fearful. The worst you can get is a no. The reality is, if you don't ask, you don't receive. So I would say just step out of your comfort zone, go to as many professional events as you can. Try to build your network in the early stages, even online through LinkedIn. Like, LinkedIn is your best friend. Like, I wish I had LinkedIn when I was growing up. Like, the reality is that it's such an amazing platform to connect with people and just reach out to people and ask people for a coffee. Do you know what I mean? Like, just actually like, oh, I would love to pick your brains, or would you mentor me? And you'll always be surprised. Like, even if you get 10 no's, you will at least get one. Do you know what I mean? So the reality is just step out your comfort zone and reach out to people.
Absolutely. I think that came up in the previous session as well about freelancing, talking about how surprising it is how many people are just happy to go for a coffee, share something.
Absolutely.
I always think it's because at the end of the day, everyone has a bit of an ego, and the idea that someone's asking them for advice is quite flattering.
Yeah,
it's hard to say no.
definitely. And youth is their friend as well. Do you know what I mean? When they're more likely to help you as a young person than as an adult. The reality is, when you're a young person reaching out to them, they've got time. Majority of people have got time for young people. So the reality is that you are likely to get a no. If you ask in the correct way or you come in the correct manner, you're probably going to get a yes more time than no. So definitely, age is your best friend, and I would say use that to your advantage.
Great tip. Absolutely true. And the final thing that I actually wanted to touch upon is, obviously you are very heavily part of the fashion industry. What is it like being an entrepreneur in fashion specifically?
It's hard. Definitely hard. I would say, yeah, because obviously when we launched as a new platform in 2020. And obviously, like, we didn't have any kind of traction. We didn't have any kind of brand recognition in the industry. So I had to build those connections from scratch. It was so difficult that we intended on launching with 14 brands. We could only manage to like pull 4 brands onto our platform. So, and I had to recruit someone on ground in West Africa to actually recruit brands that he was familiar and he knew. So the reality is that, yeah, fashion industry is difficult and it's quite clicky as well. Do you know what I mean? Like people stay within their own cliques and their own groups. So it can be difficult actually getting traction and building those kind of relationships that will help propel you to the next level. But it's worthwhile when you get to see like a customer, buy one of our pieces and fall in love with it or post on their gram or post on social media. It's amazing. So definitely, so it's a worthwhile journey, but it's hard.
Yeah, I think that is the general takeaway here, which is it is worthwhile, but it's tough. So you've got to be
Absolutely.
prepared, and that's what this week is all about: giving people realistic expectations, making sure that people are aware of the peaks and the troughs. But I'm sure, like we said before, people who are naturally entrepreneurially inclined, they'll go for it
Yeah.
anyway. So they won't be.
And where there's a will, there's a way. If you're passionate, you'll manage to make a way. And the reality is that I think one of the things that always surprised me about the entrepreneurial journey is how much people are willing to help, if only you just ask.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, there will always be people that will support you and champion you along this journey. And as much as it's lonely, when you find your tribe, it's amazing.
Absolutely. Also, that's what having a co-founder can help with. So I would say I've got the lovely May Yip who
Definitely.
drags
Yeah, yeah,
down
yeah.
with me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. I started off with a co-founder. I'm now a solo founder. But yeah, that definitely does help. That
Both sides.
definitely does help.
Absolutely. Samuel, that is all we have time for. Thank you so much. So we
No
do
worries.
have a couple of questions, but what we're going to do is we're going to package up the questions and then send them over to you afterwards so that you can answer them in your own time and don't feel rushed.
No
Um,
worries.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate that.